It started with a silence you could feel through the television screen. Not the kind of silence that comes after a heartfelt confession or an emotional moment, but the kind that follows a bomb being dropped. One that leaves everyone frozen, unsure if they just heard what they think they did. Jennifer Aniston leaned forward, her eyes locked on Meghan Markle's, and said something that made the audience collectively gasp. You could almost hear the sound of 1,000 social media notifications lighting up in real time. Cameras flashed. The host blinked, unsure whether to intervene. And Meghan? She just smiled. That tight, practiced smile. The one she'd perfected over years of pretending that nothing could rattle her. But this time, everyone saw the crack. The moment spread online faster than wildfire. Within minutes, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok were ablaze with clips of the exchange. Hashtags like #AnistonExposesMeghan and #HollywoodTruthBomb began trending in several countries. No one had expected Jennifer, America's long-loved, carefully composed star, to say that. Not to Meghan Markle. Not on live television. And certainly not about Suits, the show that launched Meghan's fame and, as Jennifer insinuated, destroyed her marriage to Trevor Engelson. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. But what really happened that night? Was it an impulsive jab, a pre-planned ambush, or a moment of long-simmering Hollywood truth finally breaking free? To understand why Jennifer Aniston said what she did and why it hit Meghan so hard, we have to rewind years back to when Meghan wasn't yet a duchess, but a woman on the rise, hungry for fame, validation, and belonging. And somewhere between ambition and temptation, she crossed a line that would come back to haunt her, live on camera, years later. Imagine this. You're on the set of a hit TV series, lights blazing, makeup perfectly done, cameras rolling. Your chemistry with your co-star feels electric, almost dangerous. Everyone on set feels it too. The director compliments how natural it looks on screen. But what they don't know, or maybe what they pretend not to see, is that it's not just acting anymore. That's where Meghan's story began to unravel. And Jennifer? She wasn't just a bystander. She'd heard the whispers long before the rest of the world caught on. Before Meghan Markle was a royal headline, she was a Hollywood story in motion, and not all of it was glamorous. She played the part of Rachel Zane on Suits, the paralegal turned legal prodigy who everyone rooted for. But off-screen, Meghan was walking a tightrope between two worlds, the loyal wife of film producer Trevor Engelson and the ambitious actress chasing a bigger dream. The problem? One of those worlds didn't want to share her with the other. Trevor, by all accounts, adored her. He'd been the one to support her when her career was just starting out, the one who paid for acting workshops, networking events, and all those little Hollywood costs that pile up before success arrives. Friends described him as patient, grounded, even protective. Meghan, meanwhile, had the sparkle, that intoxicating confidence that convinced people she was destined for something great. They were a Hollywood love story in the making. Until Suits changed everything. When the show took off in Toronto, Meghan's life shifted overnight. Suddenly, she was surrounded by castmates, executives, stylists, and journalists. It wasn't just the fame, it was the freedom. Trevor stayed back in Los Angeles, producing indie projects, while Meghan basked in her rising star power. The distance grew, not just in miles, but in everything else that mattered. And it was during that gap that the whispers began. Whispers about chemistry that went beyond the script. Whispers that Jennifer Aniston, of all people, would one day repeat and expose. Now, why does Jennifer matter in this story? Because Hollywood isn't as big as people think. Everyone knows everyone, and stories, especially scandalous ones, travel faster than any publicist can stop them. Jennifer had mutual friends with Meghan's Suits co-stars. She'd worked with producers, stylists, and directors who'd spent time on that set. Over the years, she'd heard things that painted a very different picture of Meghan than the carefully crafted public image of humanitarian, royal, and mother. But Jennifer stayed silent. Until the day she didn't. The live interview that sparked global attention wasn't supposed to be controversial. It was billed as a Hollywood Women in Power event, a feel-good panel celebrating female success stories. Meghan was the surprise guest, meant to bring royal glamour to the mix. Jennifer was the anchor star, the seasoned professional whose presence guaranteed ratings. The host probably thought it would be a charming crossover. The old guard meets the new. But Hollywood doesn't always follow the script. When the lights came up and the cameras rolled, Jennifer's demeanor was warm. At first, Meghan smiled, charming as ever, answering the first few questions about life after royalty and balancing motherhood and fame. But then came a subtle shift. The host mentioned Suits, casually asking if Meghan missed acting. Meghan laughed, brushing it off with a polished line about loving storytelling but preferring real-life impact now. Jennifer tilted her head. It was almost imperceptible, a slight squint, the kind people make when they're deciding whether to hold back or not. And then, with perfect timing and unmistakable precision, she asked, "Do you ever miss those days on set, or that chemistry you had with your co-star? You know, the one you were still married during?" The audience froze. Meghan blinked. And just like that, the air was gone from the room. It wasn't just the words, it was who said them. Jennifer Aniston, Hollywood's sweetheart, the woman who had mastered the art of diplomacy even through her own public heartbreaks, had just thrown down a truth grenade. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't smirk. She simply delivered the line like someone who'd been holding on to it for years, waiting for the perfect moment. Why would Jennifer say that? Why then? That's what made this moment so explosive. Jennifer's reputation is built on control, composure, and grace. If she broke that code, there had to be a reason. Something personal, something she couldn't stomach anymore. Insiders claimed Jennifer felt Meghan's rise had been built on manipulation and deceit, a Hollywood performance extended into royal life. One source even said Jennifer saw Meghan as everything wrong with the new celebrity culture, all branding, no authenticity. But it wasn't just resentment. Jennifer, it turns out, had a personal connection to the story. Years before Meghan ever met Prince Harry, Jennifer had allegedly worked with a producer who was close friends with Trevor Engelson. That producer had once shared, in confidence, the heartbreak Trevor endured when rumors of Meghan's closeness with her co-star reached Los Angeles. He tried to brush it off, the producer said, but he knew. Everyone knew. It was just a matter of time. And that's where Jennifer's quiet fury came from. Not from gossip, but from empathy. She'd lived through betrayal, through tabloid lies and media manipulation. She saw echoes of her own heartbreak in Trevor's, and when Meghan sat across from her, radiating that carefully composed grace, Jennifer snapped. Now, here's the real twist. That exchange on live TV wasn't entirely spontaneous. According to a production insider, Jennifer had been hesitant to appear on the panel once she learned Meghan would also be there. She'd reportedly told the producers, "If she lies, I'm not going to sit there and nod." They thought she was joking. She wasn't. And when Meghan gave that carefully rehearsed answer about integrity and compassion, Jennifer decided she was done staying quiet. After Jennifer's line, the host tried to defuse the tension, laughing nervously, but the moment had already gone viral in real time. Someone in the audience had recorded it on their phone before the show's official feed could cut away. That clip, just 20 seconds long, spread like wildfire, racking up millions of views in hours. People weren't just shocked at the accusation. They were fascinated by the power dynamic. For once, Meghan wasn't in control of the narrative. And that's why this story matters now. Because for years, Meghan Markle has controlled her image like a fortress. Every public appearance, every interview, every line of dialogue seems rehearsed to perfection. But Jennifer Aniston's unscripted confrontation shattered that illusion, exposing a version of Meghan that the public had only heard about in whispers. It reignited old questions. Who was Meghan Markle before the palace, before the PR teams, before the global brand? And what really happened on the set of Suits that ended her marriage to Trevor Engelson? It's not just about Hollywood gossip. It's about the power of truth in a world built on illusion. Jennifer's words didn't just embarrass Meghan, they peeled back a curtain. And what's behind that curtain could change how people see her forever. As the days followed, Meghan's camp scrambled to contain the fallout. There were press statements about taken out of context comments and misinterpreted humor, but the public wasn't buying it. The footage was too raw, too revealing. Meghan's expression in that moment, that fleeting mix of shock, guilt, and anger, said more than any statement could. Meanwhile, Jennifer kept quiet. No follow-up interviews. No clarifications. Just silence. The kind that screams louder than words. And that silence made people even more curious. What did Jennifer know? How deep did it go? And why, after all these years, was she finally speaking out? Those questions are what this story is built on. Because this wasn't just a moment of awkward television. It was a confrontation years in the making. A story that stretches from early Hollywood sets to royal palaces, from whispered betrayals to global headlines. And every piece of it connects in ways that most people never imagined. But here's the real cliffhanger. That live confrontation? It wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Behind the cameras, when the show ended and the applause faded, something else happened, something no one expected. Jennifer Aniston and Meghan Markle came face to face again. Not on camera this time. No microphones. No host to mediate. Just two women in a backstage hallway, one burning with quiet fury, the other desperate to control the damage. And what Jennifer said next would make the live TV moment look like nothing at all. Before that hallway confrontation could explode into full-blown chaos, we need to rewind to the years before that fateful television moment, back to the glittering beginnings of Meghan Markle's Hollywood journey. Because to understand why Jennifer Aniston's words cut so deeply, you have to see the contrast between who Meghan was and who she became. It's easy to look at Meghan Markle now and forget she wasn't always a duchess, a global celebrity, or a master of image control. Once upon a time, she was just another ambitious actress hustling through Los Angeles, juggling auditions, side jobs, and endless rejections. She was charming, strategic, and, above all, determined. People described her as the kind of woman who could walk into a room full of executives and make everyone feel like they'd known her for years. She wasn't just likable, she was magnetic. But magnetism, as Hollywood knows too well, comes with a price. Before Suits, Meghan's resume was scattered. A briefcase model on Deal or No Deal, a few small guest roles, and an unshakable drive to climb higher. She was grinding in the shadows, waiting for the moment that would change her life. And that moment came in 2011, when she landed the role of Rachel Zane, a paralegal with sharp wit, deep confidence, and undeniable allure. It wasn't a leading role, but it was the kind of character that demanded attention. From the very first scene, people noticed. The chemistry between Meghan and her co-star was impossible to ignore. The audience loved it. But so did Meghan. At that time, she was married to Trevor Engelson, a Hollywood producer who'd believed in her long before the rest of the world did. Trevor wasn't flashy or loud. He was the kind of guy who stayed in the background, quietly supporting the woman he loved. He paid for her first acting workshops, introduced her to agents, and gave her the kind of unwavering faith most aspiring actors only dream of. They married in 2011 in a low-key beach ceremony in Jamaica, barefoot in the sand, friends laughing, love thick in the air. It looked perfect, but in Hollywood, perfection often hides the first cracks. When Meghan began filming Suits in Toronto, everything shifted. She was surrounded by a new cast, a new city, and a new kind of attention. Trevor stayed in Los Angeles, running his projects, flying back and forth when he could. But distance, both physical and emotional, started to grow. Trevor's friends later said he sensed it early. She stopped calling as much, one of them recalled. Her tone changed. It was like she'd already moved on, emotionally at least. The Suits set became Meghan's new world, and that's where the lines began to blur. The co-star she worked closely with wasn't just an actor. He was someone she shared long, intense scenes with. The chemistry that producers celebrated on screen started to spill off of it. They rehearsed alone, stayed after hours, laughed between takes, the kind of laughter that lingers. The crew noticed. Everyone did. But no one said a word. And here's where the irony begins to unfold. While Meghan's star was rising, Jennifer Aniston was already a Hollywood legend. She'd lived through her own share of public scandals, betrayal, heartbreak, tabloid warfare. She'd seen women rise fast and fall faster. She'd been the wronged woman, the America's sweetheart, the one dissected in magazines for choices she never even made. So when she first heard Meghan's name floating around in Hollywood circles years ago, Jennifer reportedly paid attention. She reminded me of someone who knows exactly what she's doing, Jennifer once told a colleague, according to a source. She's smart, but she's playing a long game. What Jennifer couldn't have known then was that Meghan's long game would lead her not just to fame, but into one of the most powerful families on earth. But before the royal titles, before the billion-dollar interviews, before the image of a global humanitarian, there was the actress on set, the one who reportedly forgot she had a husband waiting back home. As the chemistry between Meghan and her co-star deepened, rumors began to swirl in quiet Hollywood corners. Assistants whispered, hairstylists exchanged glances, and one crew member allegedly said, "You can't fake that kind of energy." Still, Meghan kept up appearances. She flew back to LA for brief weekends, smiling for photos with Trevor, pretending nothing had changed. But even those visits started to feel rehearsed, transactional, like scenes from a script she no longer wanted to play. Trevor wasn't oblivious. Friends said he confronted her once, softly, asking if something was wrong. Meghan reportedly deflected, blaming the distance, the workload, the pressure. "It's not you," she said, according to one close friend. "It's just where I am in life right now." But Trevor could feel the truth slipping between the lines. Meanwhile, back in Hollywood, Jennifer Aniston heard whispers through mutual connections. She knew Trevor loosely through the industry, a friendly acquaintance from producer circles. One night, at a dinner party, someone mentioned that Trevor was having a hard time, that his wife had become distant since moving to Toronto, that there were rumors about her and her co-star. Jennifer, who had endured her own painful experiences with betrayal, allegedly said nothing, just nodded, quietly sympathetic. But she remembered. Hollywood doesn't forget stories like that. They get filed away, brought up years later when the players have changed, but the patterns remain the same. By 2013, the marriage was falling apart. Meghan had grown into the image she'd always envisioned: independent, adored, unstoppable. Trevor, on the other hand, had become a ghost in her rearview mirror. He reportedly learned of the end not through a long emotional talk, but through a cold, clinical delivery, a package in the mail containing Meghan's wedding ring. No note, no explanation, just the silent declaration that it was over. Think about that. A man who built his wife's dreams from the ground up, blindsided by a gesture so cold it became a legend in Hollywood gossip circles. Jennifer Aniston, years later, would recall hearing that story at a charity event. According to one insider, she said quietly, "No one deserves that." It's easy to understand why. When Jennifer saw Meghan years later sitting beside her on a talk show stage, smiling that same carefully crafted smile, she couldn't resist the truth that had been gnawing at her for years. But here's where things get even more intriguing. During her Suits days, Meghan wasn't just playing with fire on screen. She was reportedly blurring emotional lines behind the scenes, too. Several insiders claimed that her relationship with her co-star became emotionally charged, filled with private texts, long walks after filming, and rehearsals that went well beyond the call sheet. Some described their bond as magnetic, others as unhealthy. Either way, it was something Trevor couldn't compete with from across the border. One production assistant once said they'd laugh between takes, touch hands, look at each other like the cameras weren't even there. Another insider put it bluntly: it stopped being acting a long time ago. And yet, no one called it out, because Meghan was good, really good. She knew how to make every gesture look professional, every conversation seem innocent. But underneath, there was tension, the kind that only people who've crossed invisible lines recognize. Jennifer Aniston had been there before, too. She'd seen colleagues, friends, even partners fall into that same gray zone, where work and intimacy intertwine until you can't tell where one ends and the other begins. That's why, when the rumors resurfaced years later, that Meghan's affair on Suits was the real reason her marriage imploded, Jennifer didn't dismiss them. She'd lived enough Hollywood lives to know that where there's smoke, there's usually fire. So when Meghan Markle, now a duchess, took her seat beside Jennifer Aniston on live television, the air was already thick with unspoken history. Jennifer wasn't just staring at a royal. She was staring at a reflection of every Hollywood illusion she'd ever learned to see through. But here's the twist that most people don't know. That wasn't their first encounter. According to an insider at a previous awards event, Jennifer and Meghan had met briefly at a private afterparty in Beverly Hills a few years earlier. Meghan, already dating Prince Harry at the time, had approached Jennifer with the kind of confidence that bordered on arrogance. "You're such an inspiration," she'd said, almost rehearsed. Jennifer smiled politely, thanked her, but later told a friend, "There's something performative about her. Like she's studying the room for cameras even when there aren't any." That moment, small as it seemed, planted a seed. Jennifer knew the type. And when that type lies long enough, Hollywood has a way of catching up. So when Jennifer looked across that stage years later and saw Meghan pretending to be humbled, gracious, and saintly, she couldn't do it anymore. She wasn't there to start a fight, but she wasn't going to sit silently through a performance, either. Because Jennifer Aniston has built her career on authenticity, or at least the closest thing to it Hollywood allows. She knows pain, betrayal, and the cost of public perception. She's had her heartbreak dissected on covers, her integrity questioned, her privacy shattered. Watching Meghan play the victim while knowing the whispers behind her suit story was too much to stomach. And so, when the moment came, when Meghan smiled her way through another carefully worded answer about female empowerment and truth-telling, Jennifer's silence broke. She leaned forward. The studio lights caught her expression, calm but razor-sharp. And then, with one deceptively simple question, she cracked the facade. "Do you ever miss those days on set? Or that chemistry you had with your co-star? You know, the one you were still married during?" Every syllable landed like a stone. For a split second, Meghan froze. The smile faded. Her pupils widened. You could almost see the gears turning, the panic behind the poise. The host laughed nervously, trying to deflect, but it was too late. The moment had already become legend. That's the thing about live television. There are no edits, no second takes. What Jennifer said was now immortalized, broadcast to millions, and impossible to retract. But here's the thing. That wasn't even the most shocking part. Because what happened after the cameras stopped rolling, behind those studio doors, out of sight, would make that live confrontation look like a warm-up act. Jennifer and Meghan's backstage showdown would reveal things no one saw coming. Secrets, resentment, and a confrontation that left everyone speechless. The tension backstage was like static before a lightning strike. Thick, charged, waiting to snap. Crew members pretended to busy themselves with cables and clipboards, but every pair of eyes in that green room was drawn to the same corner. Meghan Markle, standing stiffly near the door, her jaw tight, her phone clutched like a weapon. Across the room, Jennifer Aniston sipped from a bottle of water, calm, almost serene. The contrast was surreal. One woman looked like she was holding the world together with sheer willpower. The other looked like she'd finally stopped pretending. It wasn't supposed to go like this. Meghan had been briefed, coached, and media trained down to every flicker of expression. She was supposed to charm, disarm, and glide through the evening untouched. Just another celebrity appearance, another chance to polish her post-royal image. But Jennifer Aniston had cut straight through the script. And now, the Duchess of Sussex looked like a cornered actress trying to remember her lines. A producer whispered something into Meghan's ear. She nodded absently, but didn't move. The cameras were off, but the real show had just begun. One eyewitness later described the scene in a hushed tone. You could feel it. That silence before two powerful women clash. Everyone stayed still. No one wanted to breathe wrong. Jennifer's assistant tried to usher her toward the exit, but Jennifer raised a hand slightly, as if to say, "Not yet." Her gaze never left Meghan. There was no malice, just a quiet conviction, the look of someone who's done being polite. Then it happened. Meghan strode across the room, heels clicking like gunshots on the polished floor. Every step was rehearsed, every move deliberate, but the fire in her eyes was raw, uncontrolled. When she reached Jennifer, she didn't lower her voice. She didn't smile. "You had no right to humiliate me like that," Meghan said. Her tone clipped, each word trembling with fury. Jennifer blinked slowly, then set her water bottle down. "Humiliate you," she said softly. "You did that yourself." The air cracked. A stagehand nearby nearly dropped his clipboard. Meghan's composure slipped for just a second. Her voice rose. "You don't know me. You don't know what I went through." Jennifer's reply was cold, steady. "You're right. I only know what everyone else saw. What you showed us. And you've been showing us a version of you for a very long time." You could have heard a pin drop. For years, Meghan had faced criticism from tabloids, critics, and royal commentators. But this was different. Jennifer Aniston wasn't a gossip columnist or a Twitter troll. She was a Hollywood veteran with decades of experience surviving the same system Meghan claimed had broken her. And for Jennifer to confront her like this face to face, woman to woman, was a reckoning Meghan hadn't anticipated. Still, Meghan wasn't backing down. "You think you're some moral authority?" she snapped. "You think you can judge me because you've played America's sweetheart for 20 years? You don't know what it's like to fight your way through the noise." Jennifer let out a quiet, almost pitying laugh. "Oh, trust me, I know noise," she said. "But the difference is, I didn't create mine." For a moment, they just stood there, two women on opposite sides of fame, power, and truth. And in that moment, everyone watching could feel it. This wasn't just a disagreement. It was years of buried resentment surfacing in one electric exchange. Meghan's phone buzzed in her hand. She ignored it. "You've crossed a line, Jennifer," she said. "You don't know what that kind of comment can do. You could destroy a reputation." Jennifer raised an eyebrow. "Which one? The one you built, or the one you buried?" That line, that single, devastating question, would later become the centerpiece of every viral headline about the confrontation. Someone backstage, as it turned out, had been recording. The audio would leak days later, confirming every word. But in that moment, Meghan didn't know it was being captured. She just stared, frozen, before muttering something under her breath, something only a few people caught. "You don't know who you're dealing with." Jennifer didn't flinch. "Neither do you," she said quietly. And then, with the grace of someone who'd said what she needed to say, Jennifer turned and walked out. No drama, no grand exit, just quiet finality. Meghan stood still for several seconds, her expression unreadable, before storming off in the opposite direction. What happened next was the kind of chaos only Hollywood can produce. By the time both women were in their cars, word of the backstage argument had already reached producers, agents, and entertainment journalists. A sound tech, the same one who'd accidentally recorded the exchange, had leaked it to a gossip blog. Within an hour, the clip was online. By morning, it was everywhere. The audio was grainy but clear enough. Jennifer's calm tone, Meghan's defensive outburst, that one fatal line about burying a reputation. It didn't take long before commentators began dissecting every second like forensic analysts. Was Jennifer justified? Was Meghan exposed? Was this just another power play in a long Hollywood game? For Meghan, the fallout was immediate. Her PR team launched into overdrive. Statements were drafted, retracted, rewritten, taken out of context, edited for shock value, fabricated narrative. But the damage was done. Once the public hears something real, unfiltered, unpolished, they can never unhear it. And here's where things took an unexpected turn. Trevor Engelson, Meghan's ex-husband, had stayed silent for years. He'd endured the headlines, the humiliation, and the endless speculation about what happened to their marriage. But when the Jennifer-Meghan audio leak hit the airwaves, Trevor's name began trending again. Old photos resurfaced. Paparazzi started camping outside his house. For the first time in a decade, people wanted to hear his side. At first, Trevor refused. He told friends he didn't want to get dragged back into that circus. But as the narrative evolved, as the world started asking if Jennifer's words about Meghan Suit's affair had been true, Trevor's silence began to feel like its own statement. And then, quietly, he broke it. A journalist for a mid-tier Hollywood publication, known for its credibility over clickbait, reached out for comment. To everyone's surprise, Trevor didn't say no. He didn't give a tell-all interview or a scandalous confession. Instead, he issued one short, haunting statement. Sometimes the truth doesn't need to be defended. It just needs time to be seen. That line lit the internet on fire. People dissected it from every angle. Some said it confirmed everything Jennifer had implied. Others said it was Trevor's way of finally letting go. But either way, the silence that followed only fueled the flames. Meanwhile, Jennifer Aniston, calm as ever, stayed completely off the grid. No interviews, no social media posts, no denials or confirmations. The media couldn't get a single quote from her. And that, ironically, made her look even more powerful. The woman who said nothing suddenly said everything. Meghan, on the other hand, went into damage control mode. Her team reached out to talk show hosts, influencers, even sympathetic journalists, offering exclusives and behind-the-scenes truths. But something had shifted. The public's patience had run thin. People weren't interested in another polished PR story. They wanted raw truth, the kind Jennifer Aniston had delivered live, without a filter. And then, as if the universe decided to twist the knife a little deeper, a second leak emerged, this time video footage. The clip was short, just under 30 seconds, but it showed Meghan and Jennifer backstage, arguing. Meghan's face red with anger, Jennifer calm but unyielding. You could faintly hear Jennifer's line, "You buried your own reputation." The clip ended with Meghan's expression, somewhere between rage and realization, as she turned away from the camera. It was all the confirmation the public needed. Within hours, major entertainment networks picked it up. YouTubers, commentators, and celebrity insiders flooded the internet with breakdowns. Some called it Hollywood's realest moment in years. Others said it was the end of Meghan's untouchable image. But one thing was clear. Jennifer Aniston had done what no one else could. She'd exposed the gap between Meghan's story and her reality. But why did it sting so deeply? Why did Jennifer's words echo louder than any tabloid headline or royal rumor? Because it wasn't about fame or jealousy. It was about hypocrisy. Jennifer represented old Hollywood, the kind that earned its scars, took its hits, and survived without rewriting the narrative every 6 months. Meghan represented the new, curated, controlled, influencer-driven. And when those two forces collided, authenticity won. In the days that followed, sources close to Jennifer said she felt no regret. One even quoted her as saying, "Some truths need sunlight." Meanwhile, Meghan's circle scrambled to regroup. Damage control meetings stretched into the night. Legal advisors drafted defamation warnings. But deep down, Meghan knew something irreversible had happened. For years, she had mastered the art of controlling perception. But now, someone had spoken from a place of undeniable credibility, and the world believed her. And just when it seemed like the chaos might finally settle, a whisper began to circulate through Hollywood that Jennifer Aniston wasn't done, that she had more. Emails, testimonies, a story that went deeper than just Suits. And what Jennifer revealed next, not on camera, but through a quiet statement that would break the internet once again, would leave Meghan with no defense left to stand on. Because what was about to surface wasn't rumor. It was proof, and it would connect the dots between Meghan's marriage, her rise, and the betrayal that started it all. The storm didn't die down, it only grew darker. Within days, headlines were spinning out of control. Talk shows, gossip blogs, and even mainstream media outlets began piecing together timelines, connecting Jennifer's words to something far bigger than one tense TV exchange. The narrative had shifted from Aniston embarrasses Meghan to Hollywood finally tells the truth about Meghan Markle. And in the middle of that chaos, one question echoed across every platform. What exactly did Jennifer Aniston know? At first, it sounded like typical Hollywood speculation. People assumed Jennifer had heard rumors, maybe secondhand gossip. But then, an anonymous insider from her team leaked something that changed everything. Jennifer, they said, had proof. Not gossip, not hearsay, but tangible, traceable evidence about Meghan's behavior during her Suits years. And according to that source, Jennifer had been sitting on it for a long time. But before the public could even digest that revelation, a new development sent shockwaves through the entertainment world. A reputable entertainment journalist, one known for digging deep and verifying every claim, published a detailed expose titled The Untold Files, Meghan Markle's Secret Hollywood Past. In it were fragments of Jennifer's alleged communications, statements from people who had worked on Suits, and even references to messages exchanged between Meghan and her co-star while she was still married to Trevor Engelson. It was brutal, and it was believable, because for once, this wasn't coming from tabloids or angry ex-staff. These were Hollywood professionals, people who had nothing to gain by speaking up, but everything to lose if caught lying. The story detailed a series of incidents during the filming of Suits that painted a very different picture of Meghan than the one she projected in her post-royal interviews. There were whispers of closed-door rehearsals that went on long after the rest of the cast had left, private dinners that blurred personal and professional lines, and text messages that hinted at an emotional entanglement that went far beyond co-stars helping each other with dialogue. One producer, speaking under anonymity, reportedly said, "Everyone knew something was happening, but we also knew Trevor still believed they were happily married. It wasn't our place to interfere, but the tension on set was obvious." It wasn't the cheating itself that shocked people. Hollywood isn't exactly a stranger to infidelity. It was the timing, the coldness, and the way Meghan allegedly used her marriage as a prop while emotionally detaching from it. And the person who'd known all along, who had quietly carried this truth for years, was Jennifer Aniston. According to sources close to Jennifer, she'd been told about Meghan's behavior years ago by someone who worked closely with Trevor Engelson during the breakdown of his marriage. The same producer had allegedly confided in Jennifer during a dinner in Malibu, sharing Trevor's heartbreak in vivid detail. The sleepless nights, the phone calls that went unanswered, the packages returned unopened. Jennifer had never forgotten that story. So when she found herself sitting across from Meghan on live television, watching her discuss female integrity and truth-telling, it wasn't just uncomfortable, it was infuriating. She couldn't let it slide anymore. Not after everything she'd seen and heard. The fallout from the Untold Files article was catastrophic for Meghan. Her team's immediate response was denial, a flat, sterile statement calling the claims false, defamatory, and part of a coordinated smear campaign. But the problem was, the story didn't rely on rumor. It had receipts, old photos, verified dates, and even a few screenshots of emails exchanged between Meghan and a crew member that hinted at late-night meetings and blurred boundaries. Jennifer, for her part, didn't issue a single statement, but her silence spoke volumes. When paparazzi caught her outside a Los Angeles studio a few days later, she gave a faint smile when asked about Meghan. That smile, that subtle, knowing expression, became the new viral image plastered across every major site. Hollywood insiders began calling it the look that ended a brand. The public, meanwhile, was split. Some defended Meghan, arguing that her past shouldn't define her present. Others felt deceived, betrayed even, not because she'd had an affair, but because she'd built her entire post-royal image on authenticity and victimhood. How could someone preach honesty while hiding so much? That contradiction became the beating heart of every conversation. Even late-night hosts weighed in, some joking, others serious. One remarked, "If Jennifer Aniston calls you out for being fake, maybe it's time to check your mirrors." The audience roared. The laughter was merciless. But beneath the entertainment value, something deeper was happening, a shift in how people saw Meghan Markle. For years, her narrative had been carefully protected, the outsider mistreated by the establishment, the woman who spoke truth to power. But now, Jennifer Aniston, a figure universally respected for her composure and credibility, had torn that narrative apart without shouting or campaigning. Just one sentence on live TV, one unshakable gaze, and decades of PR unraveled. And then came the next twist, one no one saw coming. Jennifer's longtime friend, a retired studio executive, gave an exclusive interview to an industry podcast. He didn't name Meghan outright, but he didn't need to. Listeners connected the dots instantly. He said, "There's a reason certain people in Hollywood have an easier time reinventing themselves. Some know how to erase their past before anyone can question it. But that only works until someone who remembers decides not to forget." That line alone sent the podcast's viewership soaring. Comment sections filled with speculation, people piecing together old interviews, archived photos, and production notes from Meghan's Suits era. Fans became detectives. Conspiracy channels dissected Jennifer's every word, analyzing gestures, expressions, even pauses from the live show where she confronted Meghan. But while the internet spiraled, Meghan was spiraling privately. Reports emerged that she'd gone completely dark, canceling appearances, shutting down scheduled meetings, and pulling out of several planned charity collaborations. Her team tried to portray it as personal time, but insiders said it was crisis management. Her inner circle, once fiercely loyal, started to fracture. Some aides quietly quit, others leaked, and those leaks painted a picture of a woman cornered, furious, and terrified of losing control. She wanted revenge, not reconciliation. According to one insider, Meghan told her team, "Jennifer thinks she's untouchable. Let's see how she feels when we fight back." And fight back she did, but not in the way anyone expected. Behind the scenes, Meghan's lawyers began drafting a letter, not a lawsuit, but a warning shot, addressed to the producers of the talk show where the confrontation had taken place. It accused them of negligence, of allowing defamatory comments to air, of failing to protect the integrity of a public figure. But here's the problem. Jennifer hadn't accused Meghan of anything illegal. She'd simply asked a question. And legally, questions are hard to sue over. That's when Jennifer's quiet power became evident again. She didn't hire lawyers. She didn't counter. She didn't even acknowledge the letter publicly. Because she didn't have to. The court of public opinion had already ruled. And what Meghan didn't realize, not yet, anyway, was that her biggest problem wasn't Jennifer Aniston anymore. It was the people who had stayed silent for years but were now emboldened by Jennifer's stand. Crew members, old colleagues, even a few close friends from her Suits days. They started coming forward, sharing fragments of stories that aligned too neatly to be coincidence. One of them said, "Jennifer said out loud what everyone else was too scared to say." Another claimed Meghan had threatened people with career consequences if they ever talked about her personal life. The floodgates had opened. Every attempt Meghan made to control the damage only seemed to make things worse. Every denial triggered another revelation. Every no comment was answered by someone else saying, "Actually, here's what happened." And just when it seemed like the frenzy might finally die down, Jennifer Aniston reappeared, not with an interview, but with a quiet, devastating move. She attended a charity gala wearing a simple black gown, elegant as ever. When reporters asked about the controversy, she simply said, "Sometimes silence is the most honest response." That single line went viral within minutes. It was calm, graceful, and lethal. Meghan's silence, on the other hand, no longer felt powerful. It felt like surrender. But behind the cameras, something even bigger was brewing, something that would take the story from scandal to history. Because someone, a person from Meghan's inner circle, was about to leak the final piece. The emails. The ones Jennifer Aniston's source had alluded to. The ones Meghan's team swore didn't exist. And when those messages hit the internet, there would be no room left for spin, no path left for escape, and no more hiding behind royal titles or PR statements. Because what those emails revealed wasn't just infidelity. It was intent. One morning, without warning, a digital storm swept across Twitter, Reddit, and Instagram. Someone had dropped a file, anonymous, encrypted, entitled "The Emails That Tell Everything." Within hours, hundreds of thousands of people were dissecting its contents, connecting dots, cross-referencing timestamps, and realizing that the unthinkable had just become undeniable. The emails were allegedly between Meghan Markle and her Suits co-star. They weren't love letters, not in the traditional sense. They were something worse. They read like conversations between two people trying to convince themselves that what they were doing wasn't wrong. Late-night messages about rehearsing alone, cryptic jokes about chemistry homework, and one chilling line that the internet couldn't stop quoting. "He doesn't need to know. He wouldn't understand the art." That one sentence shattered the illusion. Because he, everyone knew, was Trevor Engelson. The woman who once portrayed herself as a victim of betrayal had now become its author. Within minutes, hashtags like hashtag Meghan emails, hashtag Suit Scandal, and hashtag Jennifer was right were trending globally. Commentators who had once tiptoed around Meghan's controversies were now unleashing full retrospectives, combing through years of her interviews, her contradictions, her selective truths. And the narrative that had once been Meghan's greatest weapon, her story, had finally turned against her. But here's what no one saw coming. Jennifer Aniston didn't gloat. She didn't post. She didn't celebrate. In fact, when the emails leaked, she was reportedly filming a project overseas. Her team issued no comment. Her friends said she refused to read the leaks. "She's not interested in destroying someone," one insider told a journalist. "She just couldn't let the lies keep spreading." That restraint, that quiet dignity, became another contrast between her and Meghan. Because while Jennifer stayed silent, Meghan's team scrambled to fight fires on every front. They released statements claiming the emails were doctored, illegally obtained, and maliciously edited. But digital forensics experts quickly disproved that. Metadata confirmed the messages were authentic. The timestamps aligned perfectly with Suits' filming schedules. And perhaps most devastatingly, several of those emails had CC'd other production members, meaning multiple people had seen them in real time. One former assistant, who'd stayed silent for nearly a decade, finally spoke out. "We all knew." But she was powerful, even then. She had a way of making you feel like you'd ruin your own career if you spoke the truth. That statement alone flipped the switch. Suddenly, Meghan wasn't the victim, she was the manipulator. And then came Trevor Engelson. For years, he'd stayed quiet. dignified, distant, unwilling to feed the gossip machine. But this time, the silence was deafening. When a journalist caught him outside a Los Angeles restaurant and asked if he'd seen the leaked emails, Trevor didn't answer right away. He looked tired, older than before, but composed. Then, with a faint, knowing smile, he said, "Some truths take time to find daylight. Looks like this one finally did." That single quote, 12 words, was the final confirmation the world needed. For Meghan, it was over. Her credibility, her carefully curated brand, her entire persona built on resilience and righteousness, it all began to crumble. Major outlets started retracting favorable coverage. PR experts predicted image bankruptcy. Even Netflix, which had been developing a second project with her, quietly paused production. And yet, amid all of this, one person was completely untouched: Jennifer Aniston. Her name was trending not because she'd fueled the fire, but because she'd spoken truth at the perfect moment, before the evidence surfaced, before the chaos exploded. It wasn't just a viral confrontation anymore. It was prophetic. People began revisiting Jennifer's words from that fateful talk show. "Do you ever miss that chemistry you had with your co-star? You know, the one you were still married during?" When that line first aired, it sounded like shade. Now it sounded like history. Every major media outlet began building timelines, connecting Meghan's wedding date, her suit's filming schedule, and the content of those emails. The overlap was impossible to ignore. Even more damaging were Meghan's own words in past interviews. Clips resurfaced where she described herself as a loyal partner, someone who values integrity, a person who believes in karma. Those same clips were now being replayed side by side with her leaked messages. The irony was excruciating. But what no one expected was Jennifer's next move, or rather, her non-move. Weeks passed, and she still said nothing. No interviews, no Instagram posts, no cryptic quotes. Nothing. But her silence wasn't passive. It was powerful. The contrast between Meghan's frantic media flurry and Jennifer's calm absence painted a clear picture. One was fighting to control the story, the other had already won. Meanwhile, in the royal world, the consequences began to ripple outward. Palace insiders reportedly grew anxious. King Charles's advisors quietly discussed distancing the monarchy from anything that could revive Meghan's scandals. Even Prince Harry, usually quick to defend his wife, appeared noticeably absent from public view. One royal reporter summed it up perfectly. For the first time, Harry seems unsure of what he's defending. Behind closed doors, insiders claimed Harry had confronted Meghan about the leaks. "Tell me they're not real," he allegedly said. Meghan, cornered, insisted they were fabricated. But the problem was, too many details matched reality. Flight dates, call times, even wardrobe fittings aligned with the email threads. Harry's silence grew longer each day. And then came another unexpected twist, this time from Jennifer herself. She attended a charity dinner in Los Angeles, her first public event since the scandal broke. When she walked on stage to introduce the keynote speaker, the audience rose to their feet. Cameras flashed, reporters whispered, waiting for her to say something about Meghan. But Jennifer, as always, took the high road. "I've learned that the truth doesn't always need a stage," she said gently. "Sometimes, it just needs a moment of courage." It was subtle, graceful, and devastatingly final. The crowd erupted in applause. Within hours, the clip of that line went viral. Over 50 million views in a single day. People flooded comment sections calling her the class act Hollywood needed. And the irony wasn't lost on anyone. In an era obsessed with PR, Jennifer Aniston had proven that silence and authenticity were the most powerful statements of all. Meanwhile, Meghan's empire began to shrink. Brand deals evaporated. Invitations slowed. Public sympathy waned. Her once loyal fan base fractured, some defending her fiercely, others quietly unfollowing. And perhaps the cruelest twist of all, the same outlets that once protected her began running retrospectives about her pattern of image manipulation. Still, Meghan tried to push back. She filmed an interview, pre-recorded, emotional, clearly staged to reclaim control. But when it aired, it backfired spectacularly. The host asked about Jennifer Aniston. Meghan's face hardened. "I think it's sad when people use private pain to stay relevant," she said coldly. That line detonated online. Because to the public, it wasn't Jennifer who seemed desperate for relevance. It was Meghan. Commenters flooded social media with biting comparisons. Jennifer doesn't need to talk. Her truth talks for her. Others wrote, the difference between class and chaos is just one word: Aniston. Even celebrities began to weigh in subtly. Friends of Jennifer posted cryptic but supportive messages. One simply wrote, some things don't need defending when everyone already knows. By now, Meghan's PR team was drowning. Every attempt at damage control only added fuel. Every word of denial invited another wave of evidence. And then, just when it seemed the fire couldn't burn any hotter, another name entered the narrative: the Suits co-star himself. After years of silence, he finally spoke. In an exclusive statement to a respected entertainment magazine, he didn't deny the emails. He didn't even defend Meghan. He said only this: what happens between two people behind closed doors has consequences, especially when one of them is already married. It was quiet. It was damning. And it was confirmation. At that point, there was nothing left to argue. The story was no longer speculation. It was history written in digital ink, undeniable and irreversible. And yet, amidst all this chaos, Jennifer Aniston didn't celebrate or mock. She simply went on with her life. Proof that sometimes integrity wins not by shouting, but by standing still while others crumble. But the story wasn't quite over. Because in one last twist, Meghan's camp, desperate to shift focus, began circulating rumors that Jennifer had personal motives, that her confrontation wasn't about truth. It was about revenge for a past slight. It was an absurd reach, and the public saw through it instantly. But the smear attempt revealed something far more telling. Meghan wasn't trying to protect her reputation anymore. She was trying to drag Jennifer down with her. And that desperate act, that one final grasp at control, would become the last straw. The moment that even Meghan's most loyal defenders began to turn away. Because in Hollywood, people can forgive mistakes, but they never forgive arrogance exposed. And Meghan's fall from grace, triggered by Jennifer Aniston's simple question, was now complete. To understand how the scandal leapt from Hollywood headlines into royal crisis meetings at Buckingham Palace, you have to picture the scene. Morning light hitting the windows of Clarence House, aides rushing down corridors, phones buzzing with messages from tabloids that never used to care about American entertainment stories. On every front page was the same photo: Meghan Markle, stone-faced, stepping out of a black SUV as camera flashes swallowed her. Below it, in bold type, the same headline: the emails are real. Across the Atlantic, King Charles's press secretary held an emergency call. It wasn't about foreign policy or state visits. It was about optics. Because what had started as a Hollywood spat was now staining the royal name. For years, the palace had kept Meghan and Harry at arm's length, quietly letting the Sussex brand operate independently. But now her scandal threatened to bleed into royal reputation. If the monarchy looked complicit in her lies, it would undo years of rebuilding after the Harry and Meghan exit drama. The king's advisors used one phrase over and over again: contain the contagion. They began drafting a statement, something cool and dignified: the palace does not comment on private matters. But before they could release it, another problem landed on their desks. American networks were preparing primetime specials linking Meghan's deception to her time as a royal. Clips of Jennifer Aniston's confrontation ran beside footage of Meghan curtsying, smiling, and calling herself a champion for truth. The contrast was brutal. Behind closed doors, Charles was said to be furious, not at the press, but at the embarrassment. I gave them freedom, he reportedly told an aide. What they do with it is their own making. But the crown will not share the blame. Meanwhile, Prince William and Catherine watched in disbelief from Windsor. Sources close to the couple claimed William's first words were, "This is what happens when you mistake fame for duty." He wasn't gloating, he sounded exhausted. Catherine, ever composed, simply said, "I just hope Harry is all right." But Harry wasn't all right. Inside their Montecito mansion, he and Meghan sat in silence as the news played on every screen. He looked at her, the woman he'd sacrificed family, titles, and friends for, and asked again, barely above a whisper, "Are they real?" She stared back, expression tight, eyes damp but defiant. "They're being twisted," she said. "You know how they are." But Harry wasn't convinced anymore. For the first time, he couldn't tell if she meant the tabloids or herself. Their relationship had weathered criticism before, But this was different. The Jennifer Aniston confrontation wasn't an opinion, it was evidence. For years, Harry had fought to defend Meghan's truth, insisting she was a victim of unfair scrutiny. Now, he was the one scrutinizing her. Insiders claimed that after that evening, the couple barely spoke. Meghan locked herself in her study with her PR advisors, strategizing responses. Harry took long walks alone along the coastal trail near their home, avoiding cameras, avoiding conversation. The once unbreakable alliance now looked like a pair of strangers united only by crisis. And as Harry's silence deepened, palace courtiers sensed opportunity. They couldn't erase the Sussex story, but they could protect the monarchy by separating themselves from it entirely. Within days, leaks began, quiet briefings to trusted journalists suggesting that Meghan's actions reflect her personal choices and that the royal family had no involvement in her Hollywood dealings. In other words, she was on her own. The divide that Meghan once blamed on racism and jealousy was now reinforced by cold political calculation. The royals weren't attacking her, they were deleting her. Then came the most ruthless stroke of all. The official royal website quietly altered its family members page. Harry's name remained, positioned below the working royals. Meghan's profile vanished. No announcement, no ceremony, just gone. Within an hour, screenshots flooded social media. The message was clear. The monarchy was done shielding her. Journalists called it the digital divorce. In California, Meghan exploded. "They're erasing me," she shouted at her staff, pacing back and forth, clutching her phone. "After everything I've done, after everything I gave up." But no one responded. Her team knew the truth. The palace wasn't erasing her. It was protecting itself. Then came the next bombshell. A royal insider leaked that King Charles had ordered legal counsel to review Meghan's use of the Duchess of Sussex title in business ventures. It wasn't revenge, it was containment. If she kept dragging royal branding into scandals, the crown could restrict her right to use it altogether. The paperwork began quietly, an internal review that tabloids soon described with brutal simplicity. King considers stripping Meghan's title. Suddenly, Jennifer Aniston's television question had sparked an international legal debate. The irony was staggering. Jennifer had merely asked about chemistry on set. Now, lawyers, courtiers, and royal historians were debating whether Meghan Markle should still be called Duchess. Inside Hollywood, friends started to distance themselves. Invites disappeared. Collaborations froze. Meghan's name went from currency to liability. People still took her calls, but only out of caution, not warmth. And everywhere she went, she saw Jennifer's calm face staring from magazine covers, headlined with words like truth, grace, integrity. The world had picked a side. Meanwhile, Jennifer remained untouchable. She kept filming, kept showing up to charity events, smiling politely when reporters shouted Meghan's name. One night, at a gala honoring women in film, she said something that would become the defining quote of the entire saga. "Sometimes, the hardest thing isn't speaking the truth. It's watching someone try to bury it." The room erupted. Cameras flashed. And just like that, the narrative was sealed. Back in California, Meghan's team prepared a desperate counterattack. Aides proposed an interview special, a comeback piece where she could reclaim her voice. But networks were hesitant. No one wanted to be accused of enabling another half-truth. Eventually, a streaming platform agreed, hoping for ratings. The interview was shot in her garden, all soft lighting and carefully chosen flowers. But when it aired, something felt off. Her words didn't land anymore. The public wasn't angry, they were tired. The story had burned too long. Even Harry, sitting beside her during the taping, seemed distant. At one point, she reached for his hand, and he hesitated before intertwining fingers. The camera caught it, a tiny hesitation that spoke volumes. After the interview aired, the backlash was immediate. Viewers accused Meghan of deflection, of playing the same card once too often. The sympathy that had carried her through years of controversy was gone. And then, in one final twist of fate, Trevor Engelson, quiet, private Trevor, received a letter. It wasn't from the tabloids or a producer. It was from Jennifer Aniston. The letter was short, handwritten, and personal. "I just wanted you to know," it said, "that truth has a way of finding its own path. I hope you found peace." Trevor never showed the letter to anyone publicly, but a close friend later described the way he looked at it. Not vindicated, just relieved. It felt like closure, the friend said. Like someone finally said what he couldn't. And that's when the final domino fell. King Charles issued a brief statement through the palace press office. The Duchess of Sussex will no longer represent or hold any patronages associated with the royal family. We wish her the best in her private endeavors. It was dignified, surgical, final. For Meghan, it was the end of the royal chapter, not with a bang, but with a line of text. She reportedly wept when she read it, insisting to Harry that she'd been betrayed by everyone, by Jennifer, by Trevor, by the press, by the monarchy itself. But deep down, perhaps even she knew the truth. It wasn't betrayal that brought her down. It was exposure. Jennifer Aniston hadn't destroyed Meghan Markle. She'd simply removed the mask. And now, the world could finally see the person underneath. Brilliant, ambitious, but tragically unwilling to tell the truth until it was too late. The cameras eventually moved on. New scandals replaced the old. But that moment, the look on Jennifer's face, the silence that followed, the question that started it all, lingered. Because every empire built on illusion eventually meets its truth-teller. And for Meghan Markle, that truth-teller had been sitting right across from her the whole time. But even as the world thought the story was finished, one more twist waited in the shadows. A discovery made not by Jennifer, not by Trevor, not by the palace, but by someone from Suits itself. What they uncovered would reopen wounds Meghan thought were sealed.